All right. Paul Watsky has been actively involved in poetry-related activities for 30 years or more, including 7 as a haiku poet and as poetry editor for Young Journal, Culture and Psyche, for whom he conducted interviews with Joanne Kiger, Diane Glancy, and John Peck. Paul is co-translator with Emiko Miyashita of a book of Santoka's poems and has published 2 collections of his own. His second book, entitled Walk Up Music, 2015, received a recommended review from Kirkus. His individual poems have appeared in such journals as Rattle, Smartish Place, the Carolina Quarterly, and Interim. Watsky is in practice as a Jungian analyst and splits his time between San Francisco and Inverness, where he has been sheltering in place. He is the father of 2 sons, one an airline pilot, and the other a New York Times bestselling author and rapper, who is with us, incidentally, who recently set a Guinness World Record for the longest freestyle rap, 33 hours and 33 minutes. Wow. Please welcome Paul Watsky.
Well, hello, everybody. I apologize for my hair. I don't have a barber available, and it's really kind of crazy. And I hope it's not a giveaway for what's underneath the hair, but I'm doing the best I can. And thank you very much, Sandy and Aqus Cafe. It's an honor to be here. And thank you all for turning up. I don't know exactly where here is right now. And if I had to be in Petaluma, most of you would not be here. So thank you for joining me in the non-existent space. If I were a real poet, I'd pony up daily, undistracted by paid gig or prose chore. I'd double down, and poems would sanctify my obsessive focus on avocation. I'd wake myself early, stand till all hours at my mental ironing board, flattening to perfection the drawers of my lyrical progeny. What a poet. And much thinner, because I'd embrace austerities of all sorts, eat healthy, run uphill in cold rain, a soaked watch cap, badly insulating my incredibly macho natural baldness against pneumonia. The whole world would be better thanks to my sacrifices, and oh, the poems I'd write. Now, I'm going to read a pair of poems from each of the 2 books that Sandy mentioned before in order of which they were published. The first, Telling the Difference, came out in 2010. And this one is a sort of a tip of the hat to my other life, the one that yields me money and a whole bunch of colleagues. Were God a psychologist? The afterlife. You enter a nondescript office, metal desk, 2 or 3 straight-back chairs, and sort pictures into categories. You pick up the naked woman in chains, her bottom lashed by dwarfs sporting hefty erections, and set it on the like, dislike, or neutral pile. I've lost my place. Pile. Cards for all kinds of modes, situations, people resembling your parents. The Battle of Kursk. Representative foods. Pretty soon you assume these heaps determine your placement, your permanent future. You intuit where you're heading and turn despondent or giddily cheerful as you sort everlasting cards, day past day, while behind the mirror, something silent scratches notes. Sleepover at the old house. I don't know where she came from originally, maybe the South Pacific. This little flying sex goddess, about 18 inches long, hanging from a ceiling hook by string. She's very pale, with gold-accented green wings, nice bare breasts, pixie-ish ears, arms spread and reaching to hug me. Even though part of her foot's broken off, she's heading up the bed in my direction, but angled to miss my face and sail out the window, taking her flower-ornamented black hair, lipstick, sarong, and bangles to someone more deserving. Religion works that way. Makes me think there's a profound reason I'm alone. Now from the next book, Walk Up Music, came out in 2010. The Boy Who Won't Eat Eggs. Having known since pushing 2 that we die, never cared when he couldn't reach the faucets without a chair, and still tries to conserve his entire future like something one hand can hold or slip into his pocket, weighty, cool its shell. The second one from Walk Up Music was inspired by a YouTube video I saw. A Dutch artist's pet cat had died, and instead of burying her, he had her stuffed and turned her into a drone aircraft. And her arms and legs were sort of spread out like this, and her eyes were sort of golden and glaring, glass beads, you know. And he had this cat out in the field, flying it around to terrorize the cattle who were stampeding back and forth. And so that got me thinking. Dead cat bounce. Something's off, I know, about retooling taxidermied felines as remote-controlled model aircraft. Abominable, actually, to impose that on the self-effacing moiré, lady, shy, dainty, a favorite of my wife's, who ran off permanently to cohabit with distant neighbors after my critters and I moved in. But other pets might appreciate going Borg. Say those adopted Persian-esque Saruman, his consort baby Roscoe, and their neurologically challenged, dumb but loving daughter Perbody, who I found laid out stiff as a boogie board under the cabin when she was about 2, most likely head-kicked by a goat against whose hind legs she rubbed once too often. Saruman ruled, stole whatever he craved, and died ignominiously from pneumonitis. Baby Roscoe was a pirate, aggressively territorial, great in skirmishes, a survivor of everything except her prolapsed rectum. What a tidy squadron. He, the stealth bomber, huge, black, and hairy. The missus, an AH-64D Apache longbow helicopter, belly-mounted 30mm chain gun, Hellfire missiles, and Hydra 70 rocket pods. I'd compensate Perbody's spazziness and fits by hybridizing her with the agile Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor, a single-seat fighter capable of Mach 1.82 in supercruise mode, whose faulty oxygen feed wouldn't compromise an already lifeless pilot. Goats, you got it coming. These are much more current poems, and they'll be part of a manuscript I'm working on for a 3rd book. And if any of you like this stuff and happen to know of a good, respectable publisher who might like it too, I'd be happy to hear from you. Best would be to email me at pwatsky2, that's numeral 2 at gmail.com, because I don't trust my poetry website to actually send me stuff anymore. I think something happened to it. Optics. You call back the orphaned infant, hand him off for less implausible display to the fat old slob's knockout squeeze. Line up everybody, ground zeroing the crimson MAGA tie and first misses, flanked by a brace of the baby's confused grandfolks. Tell him the cheese. The slob flashes his grinning thumbs up, and OMG, sweet Jesus, a shot, voila, to drop the jaw of any political animal straight to its knees, babbling. In Memoriam, El Paso, 2019. If you want to live forever, seems you'll require a generous selected handful of little polished stones. A person stuck in town this weekend requested I stop by the spiritual store, more, I imagine, to project positivity than from conviction, to help out someone doing badly, which I didn't begrudge, being personally fond of rocks, their price in line with an elaborate bouquet. Each pebble, however, cost enough to rate individual wrapping, along with an attractive, closely printed, instructive card on what to expect performance-wise, e.g. clear quartz, the quote, master healer, unquote. Only innocent magic here, no overt striving to rule them all. Black kyanite, a porcelain toughener for spark plugs, to quote, repair holes in the aura, unquote. Chrysocolla serving up stress relief. Chrysotile, AKA white asbestos, one world's established carcinogen, but in our parallel universe, allegedly a motivator. Fire agate, quote, sending harm back to its source, unquote. Hopefully the semi-precious for zapping metastases. Meanwhile, I sit alone, out at the dormant fire pit, surrounded by unsanctified gravel, from which in spring emerged the native poppy plants, now, after completing their cycle, dried up and disappeared. Windless, lovely, a late afternoon to make eternal life look pretty good. Mother cried about me a lot, especially because her original tiny sweet baby was all gone, as if snatched by gypsies. Later, she told me she was afraid of babies. I once read an article informing me my poem should, in order to be any good, make people cry, meaning I better pretend to be your sad little lost baby too, so we can drip our synchronized tears onto the page or flick them in unison, bit, bit, at the TV monitor. Mom died 2 weeks shy of 100, and believe me, it was always better when she wasn't crying. Now this is another one with an outside inspiration. I found a couple of tiny yellowed news clippings in a box of material I was finally going through, excavating after many years in the closet. And it's a double poem under a single title. It's called Birds in the Columns. 1, a chicken named Weirdo, 22 pounds, world's heaviest, dominates a couple of newsprint inches, saved among a liquor carton of my letters, dating between 40 and 50 years back. Weirdo had sent its master to the hospital for stitches, killed her own 18-pound son, as well as a brace of cats. Fini. Zero backstory or editorializing. Bird headed for a bad end. But what chicken isn't? The decades didn't untwist me internally. Data received, appreciated. 2, Tweety Pie features in the only other news item among my ancient correspondence, a budgie who went nuts while I was teaching English during the early 1970s, afflicted due to quote unquote inbreeding with an overgrowth of neck feathers, then accidentally self-traumatized by peering into the cage mirror, causing fits and ongoing paranoia, nocturnal screeching, fighting imaginary enemies, curling up in a corner. Tweety had been dosed with Valium, chlorpromazine, but the vet, fearing potential addiction, planned to impose a taper. The curtain closed. Maybe after a dozen years, that parakeet, like me, switched fields and became a psychotherapist. Just by recounting his adventures, he'd have done some other weirdos good. Now this is a poem from the community of writers. It's about the last time I was up there in the flesh 3 years ago. I just attended their Poetry Week in virtual space. And it's dedicated to the friend I'm with later on in the poem, Don McGuire. And so here's that squaw poem. What mattered to me about the wind and the willows was friendship, a rat, a mole, sharing the river, which of course represented time, proceeding lawfully according to nature's dictates. My first friend ever in 4th grade was a girl, Susan D., daughter of renowned dancers. She didn't fit much better than I, and our dates involved hanging out at Riverside Park, where we'd pick dandelions she'd bring home for her mother to make salads. She was a small, good animal, quiet, and I have no idea what, if anything, I meant to her. 50 or so years later, Charles K., old friend from psych school I'd see when visiting Montana, gave me a first fly fishing lesson on Horse Creek. He told me how a local widow adopted her husband's rod-making craft and became world famous. I showed little aptitude for casting, but he promised to keep on coaching, which, except for glioblastoma, he surely would have done. Now, this late June afternoon, lunch spent contemplating neurologist and Jungian analyst, childhood miseries, suicide, we, friends, sit beside the truckee, rushing its snowmelt past us, sharing its homemade breeze. Who, pray, reads that antiquated book? Hardly anyone inclined to diagnosing close acquaintances could judge it less than utterly au courant. Take Mole, the dysthymic, Ratty and his touch of OCD, Toad, unmistakably bipolar with narcissistic features, Stoats, weasels, psychopathic every one. Poor Mr. Badger, crippled by his social phobias, Otter, extroverted, omnicompetent, though we doubt he ever cracks a spine. Nasty rabbits, informed exclusively by televised Fox News. The river, illiterate, merely flows, nobody's special pal. I'm going to finish up with 3 more, mostly medium length. If any of you are Game of Thrones fans, would you just raise a hand here? Because otherwise you may be rather lost and repelled, but I'll risk it. This is about my favorite character in the show. It's called Spoiler. Teenage Arya Stark peels off her substitute face so the depraved old lord truly can contemplate her while she slits his throat. The pie this girl justly served him, a collation of his sticky, mean, a collation of his icky, mean, murdered sons cooling on its plate. I'm happy for Arya, who worked hard to get here. 6 TV years of rarely mitigated familial catastrophe, watching her grow skillful, oriented, battle-scarred, cruel, a junior colleague of death personified, caught irretrievably in entertainment world, where the worst scripted happens both arbitrarily and inevitably. The harshest winter in a millennium arrives as forecast in season 1. Vengeance, it's our only reward. Now this one is kind of a tribute to the office I've done psychotherapy in for 40 years, and perhaps someday I'll get to do psychotherapy there again. I hope so, but maybe not. Who knows? Things are changing. 2 women visiting my venue. The older, late 40s, Chinese, with her Chinese-American translator, very courteously inspect the obtrusively displayed calligraphy. One of Guan Hanjin's shorter poems, a modern rendering by my long-gone gift giver asserted, a master related to her husband. The younger guest, slightly built, impeccably accommodating, frowns and reports exactly where in the field the artist's energy fatally diminishes, as if he got bored. Fudging moon, small, faint, wobbly, midway through the procession of characters. But she consoles me live further along. A few recover somewhat. Next, they turned to the large 19th century silk painting inherited from my mother, who believed it valuable. Again, displeasure. The elder, baffled by how it got screwed up so badly. Way too thick plum branches blooming over a sorrowful-looking matriarch. The medley of jumbled seasonal motifs creating a temporally anarchic landscape. When I explain, this is the handiwork of an Italian who moved to China, she laughs and relaxes. He can be excused for knowing nothing, as can I. And then I'm going to close with this for one of the younger generations who knows this world far more intimately than I do. Like this page, because it's me, because it's not me, because when you're a page, I'll like you back, because you'll do as you're told, because you've got extra time, dirt, blood on your hands, because you believe shit flows uphill, because he'll forgive you eons in purgatory, because if you've got friends, they'll think you're cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul.
Yay!
Wonderful.
Great.
That's
So
wonderful.
good.
Really wonderful.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for coming.
You.
Really great.
Yay!
All right. Wow. I feel so filled up like I've just eaten a huge feast. Poetry.